Kia ora tātou, good morning everybody, and welcome to the banquet hall here at Parliament Buildings for this very important symposium. I'm delighted to be your official host for the next couple of days. I'm delighted to see such a large turnout from New Zealand and abroad, and I'm looking forward to what the symposium holds for all of us. Can I acknowledge Alison and thank her very much for her welcome. I know of your interest because we've talked about this on radio a number of times, and I must say that I always enjoy those exchanges because they are usually well informed and challenging, so thank you. And I think you're a perfect person in many senses to chair this symposium today. I wasn't aware of the fact that I'm the only male who's presenting. I'm not sure of the significance of that. I will regard it as somewhat of a challenge. But here we have in this room a collection of experts from all over the world who want to talk with us and to us about shifting attitudes and responses to drug issues. And this really provides a fantastic opportunity for us all to explore some innovative ways in which we might take these complex issues forward. And I want to extend my warmest greetings to everyone who's travelled from outside of Wellington to be here, particularly to our international guests. It's a delight and a privilege to have you amongst us. You may be aware there's a lot going on in New Zealand at the moment. We have an international rugby tour. We have the celebration of a significant yachting competition win, the preparation for a general election in a little under 12 weeks, and of course we have this symposium, and that's clearly the most important event. Following me this morning will be Professor Alison Ritter from Australia, who will present us with a first-class overview of the landscape. And then following Professor Ritter, and I think after morning tea, will be the Honourable Anne McClellan from Canada and Alison Holcomb from the United States. I'm going to be very excited to hear the first-hand accounts of implementing drug policy in their respective jurisdictions that they will have to share with us. And the morning will finish with a cross-party political panel for some reflection on what we've heard during the proceedings to date. In my remarks now, I want to highlight some of the things that we have achieved over the last few years, and then talk about some of the challenges remaining and the innovative thinking that has been going on in the area of drug policy in New Zealand. As many of you will know, our national drug policy focuses on early intervention and prevention, and the underlying principles are compassion, proportion, and innovation. These are principles that I've emphasised very strongly on numerous occasions in New Zealand, at UN meetings in Vienna, at the UN General Assembly in New York, and I will continue to affirm them because they are critical to our approach. With this policy, which is just 18 months old, we set out to increase access to support and treatment services, to provide the knowledge and tools necessary for better decision making, and to reduce the illegal supply of drugs. The principles of the national drug policy demonstrate our commitment to taking a health-based approach to minimising drug and alcohol harm in New Zealand, rather than treating drugs primarily as a law and order issue. So given that, I want to take a moment to highlight a few examples of the progress that we've already made under the guidance of the national drug policy over the last year or so. In Northland, for the visitors, that's the far north of the North Island, the Te Ara Oranga methamphetamine harm reduction pilot is a very good example of a collaborative community harm reduction approach in action. That builds on earlier initiatives, such as the Auckland Regional Methamphetamine Working Group that was established in 2011, and the Waikato Methamphetamine Prevention Strategy established in 2016. This pilot scheme in Northland will be a joint venture between the police and the Northland District Health Board. Its aim will be to reduce demand for methamphetamine used in the Northland community and thereby reducing the overall harm caused by its use. The program will be working with the community and whānau to help addicted users and gang members get treatment for their methamphetamine use, and it will be launched next month. The high visibility of the Health Promotion Agency's Go the Distance campaign demonstrates our approach to minimising harm by changing attitudes. That campaign aims to instil a new norm of moderate alcohol consumption, something of a departure from the historical New Zealand culture of hazardous drinking behaviour. Our police and customs officials have made great progress in breaking the drug supply chain. They are developing very good working relationships with overseas law enforcement agencies and have increased the number of drug interceptions coming across the border. And as a prime example of our focus on early intervention and prevention, a whole school approach pilot to reduce alcohol and other harm will be underway across a number of schools in New Zealand very shortly. This initiative equips schools with more resources to keep students engaged in education by creating a more positive school environment, by delivering effective education on alcohol and drug-related harm, and providing help for problematic substance abuse. Over the next 12 months, the government will begin work on refreshing the actions that were outlined in the National Drug Policy to take us through to 2020. And that will build on the good work that has already been achieved and is currently underway. Now, as we all know, medicinal cannabis-based products are a very hot topic right now, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the next few speakers have to say, as well as having the opportunity to discuss it afterwards when the panel meets. In New Zealand, we are in the process of developing regulations for accessing cannabidiol on a prescription basis. This will bring us into line with the Australian approach, which previously identified that cannabidiol appears to have some therapeutic benefits while posing very little psychoactive effects. This easing of restrictions on something that used to be highly regulated reflects, I think, our pragmatic and compassionate approach on this issue. We've also made significant progress around enabling access to non-pharmaceutical grade cannabis products over the last 18 months or so. We've moved from a system that did not really allow for it to now having a robust clinician-led process and strong engagement from the Ministry of Health. I'm also very keen to see New Zealand-based clinical trials being undertaken, and I've advocated strongly and will continue to do so for progress on this to occur. Whether anything comes to fruition from these discussions remains to be seen, because these are ultimately commercial players making market decisions. But I strongly believe New Zealand must make progress on this front to avoid falling behind other jurisdictions. Products that have been through a robust clinical trial process, I believe, hold the most promise in effectively addressing the conditions for which they may be indicated. And as I have stated previously, trial and error is not an acceptable approach to serious illness in a first world country like New Zealand. While I am delighted that we have achieved some success in lessening drug harm, reducing supply and easing unnecessary legal restrictions, we need to remain focused on the challenges ahead. For example, we need to continue to reduce hazardous alcohol consumption and nurture a moderate drinking culture. Reducing alcohol consumption and changing attitudes towards it are key objectives of the National Drug Policy. And so far there has been encouraging progress. The percentage of adults who drink hazardously has decreased from around 18% in 2006-07 to 16% in 2013-14, a small but a significant improvement. But perhaps more significantly, amongst 18 to 24-year-olds, hazardous drinking has decreased from about 43% in 2006-07 to just 33% in 2013-14. That is a substantial decrease of nearly a quarter, and it's good to see young people leading by example in this area. Now, you're immediately going to challenge me, and I will agree with you, that even at that level, binge drinking among 18 to 24-year-olds is still too high, but such a significant decrease over a comparatively short period of time must be acknowledged for its magnitude. The message is getting through, and a significant proportion are either changing their behaviour or refraining from such behaviour in the first place, and we need to reinforce that, because our rates of hazardous drinking remain high by international standards, and alcohol continues to be a key factor in about a third of our fatal road crashes. Alcohol is also a key factor in a third of family violence incidents. But let me say this, while it may well be a factor, it is no excuse, because there can be no excuse for family violence. Now, there's no place for family and domestic violence in New Zealand, nor anywhere else. And I want to commend the work of my colleague, the Minister of Justice, the Honourable Amy Adams, and many others who are being proactive in this area. But of course, we cannot address these issues properly without addressing the harmful stigma which engulfs alcohol and substance use disorders. We need to build on the good work done so far to cultivate a more moderate drinking culture, to have more open conversations, and make it easier to access alcohol, drug, and youth support services. Earlier this year, I read an article in the news about workplace drug testing, in which the head of a drug testing agency stated about employers, and I quote, "They certainly don't want someone who's got an addiction problem entering into their workplace," end quote. I have to say I found that to be a pretty disappointing response. I think it's counterproductive, but unfortunately it is indicative of the views of some, and perhaps that some is many, around addiction issues. Drug testing plays an important role in New Zealand's higher risk workplaces, particularly where machinery is involved, for the benefit of the individual, for their colleagues, and the company as a whole. But let us not lose sight of the health and safety reasons for it, and not start using it as a de facto law enforcement and punitive measure. Drug testing has of course been a popular topic this week, but from a harm prevention public health perspective. The Drug Foundation's revelation that drug testing facilities at music festivals had enabled intending drug takers to get their various products tested and make an informed choice about whether to proceed is significant. And frankly, such an approach must be supported by the government. The law is, in my view, grey on the matter, and I intend to have further discussions on the issue. At a minimum, the Replacement Misuse of Drugs Act, planning for which I hope will commence a little later this year, will need to address such situations from a primarily public health perspective. There's another issue that I'm keen to keep discussing. How do we walk the fine legal line between a compassionate approach toward low-risk drug use and an uncompromising stance on large-scale criminal activity? Finding a solution that truly works is something that I am passionate about. I hear on an almost daily basis from individuals who have a particular perspective. And so often the approach they put forward will either solve everything and we will all live happily ever after by locking all the druggies up, or by throwing the market wide open and laughing all the way to the bank. Now, personally, I do not believe that there is a perfect system or a perfect policy out there. Most of the approaches that I've seen and read about have positives and negatives. The key will be to develop a system that suits New Zealand and maximises the benefits while minimising the negatives. It sounds pretty simple, does it not? Long-term, relevant and effective strategies, I believe, will be born out of progressive thinking and concrete evidence. We have already demonstrated an ability in this country to make a mark on the drug reform landscape. The Psychoactive Substances Act revolutionised our response to the ever-changing psychoactive market and put us back in the driver's seat. This innovative approach places the onus on the supplier. They must first prove the safety of a new psychoactive substance before being able to sell it. Previously, we were always one step behind, scrambling to get the safety data after a harmful substance was already on the market, and then banning it, only to see the next harmful substance appear a few days later. I've often drawn the analogy of standing at an airport at dusk and watching a plane landing to see the lights of the one behind it and the lights of the one behind that lining up to arrive. That was what it was like previously. As one landed, the next one hove into view. So the Psychoactive Substances Act was an important step to change that paradigm. Now, I anticipate that we will see its full benefits in the near future, once the vexed issue of animal testing has been resolved internationally and there are clear alternatives available. When that occurs, it is my long-held view that we should consider shifting those low-grade Class C drugs that are currently scheduled under the Misuse of Drugs Act to the Psychoactive Substances Act, where they will be able to be tested and regulated according to its provisions if they are deemed to be low risk. Such a move would not only establish a regulated market for such items, but would also deal to the black and criminal markets that currently control the production and the distribution of such drugs. The bottom line has to be to get the criminals out of the drug business where possible. And I am optimistic that the use of the psychoactive substances regime in this way would vastly improve the situation in New Zealand. As many of you will know, I am a strong supporter of the Portuguese approach to drug regulation. That manages to balance tolerance for low-risk use with clear legal and health-focused boundaries. But unfortunately, too often the public debate focuses on the former aspect alone. However, making cultivation and possession illegal while referring all drug users for assessment and, if appropriate, treatment is the crux of that system. In Portugal's case, possession of up to 10 days' worth of low-risk drug supply would warrant a referral for treatment rather than legal consequences. That is a proportionate response to low-level drug use. Much of the time and the money that would have then gone into prosecution would be able instead to be invested into the assessment and treatment services that are needed to address these issues and at the same time free up police resources for their more appropriate activity. In New Zealand, the Ministry of Health is exploring further options this year for minimising harm in relation to the offence and penalty regime for personal possession within the scope of the Misuse of Drugs Act 1975. That is one of the 28 individual actions contained in the National Drugs Policy, which I strongly encourage you to read if you have not already done so. Anybody who saw my interview on Q&A at the weekend will have heard me refer to the National Drug Policy repeatedly. It is, in my view, an excellent document and a plan of action, and addresses many of the questions that the media regularly put to me on drug issues. As it was being prepared, I had my eye not just on the here and now situation, but also on what might develop over the years ahead, so therefore focused on a document that provided a clear pathway for the future for those who wish to see it. Now, I'm well aware that my critics often accuse me of dragging my feet on drug policy, of withholding, denying, and clinging grimly to the status quo. Well, to them I say this. In the last 5 years, I have overseen the development of the internationally acclaimed Psychoactive Substances Act, the development of a pathway to access non-pharmaceutical grade cannabis products for medicinal purposes, including approving every application that I received, providing for the direct prescription of Sativex by doctors, getting the Cabinet's approval to reclassify cannabidiol, jointly with the then Minister of Police launching the outstanding Alcohol and Other Drug Court working so effectively in Auckland, and a host of other initiatives such as those contained in the National Drug Policy that I launched in August 2015. And as I say, I continue to advocate for clinical trials and drug testing at festivals. I have attended multiple international and national fora and have spoken constantly of New Zealand's compassionate, innovative and proportionate response. And in international fora, I have frequently condemned the use of the death penalty in foreign jurisdictions, particularly in relation to drug offences. All of this has been achieved as a single member party in a confidence and supply arrangement with a government that is very conservative on these issues. So to my critics, I say, look at the record and then tell me what you have achieved. That is not to say that we cannot do more, and that's why this symposium is so valuable. But we need to concentrate on the facts and the achievements to date and how we take those next steps, rather than slinging abuse at each other when we don't actually move in the direction that people want immediately. because things do not work that way. Despite enthusiasm and optimism, there is a due process to be followed, and we need to work effectively within that to achieve a positive outcome. I see this symposium as a contribution to that work, and I acknowledge particularly the role of the Drug Foundation. It's a remarkably impressive array of speakers that you've been able to line up, and I think that they will be not only informative and valuable, but I would imagine they would endorse the compassion, innovation, and proportion principles that I've emphasised. And I'm looking forward to the political panel a little later on. Can I also extend my particular congratulations to Ross Bell for not just the organisation of this event, but the role that the Foundation and you play in particular in this whole field of advocating for change and ensuring a compassionate, proportionate and innovative policy response. I've enjoyed working with you. I've enjoyed working with you in New Zealand and elsewhere, and just want to acknowledge the contribution that you've made. Sometimes you've made my life difficult. That's not always particularly enjoyable, but it's appropriate, and I value that interchange. So when you asked me would I host this symposium here at Parliament, I was delighted to quickly accept your invitation. This is an important conversation about the future direction of drug policy. I'm extremely excited to be a part of it. And over the next couple of days, I want to encourage everybody who's here to be prepared to think boldly and pragmatically about how we can come together to solve some of the challenges that lie ahead. It's the approach I try to take, and I'm certainly keen to continue to work with people of like mind. I will be popping in and out over the next couple of days as my diary permits, and I no doubt will be following the Twitter feeds to get regular updates of what's happening. But I'm absolutely delighted to welcome this remarkably illustrious group of people to Parliament. It's entirely appropriate that you're here. I wish you every success, good, stimulating debate and challenge, and I really look forward to the results. So I guess I officially at this point say the symposium is opened, and it would not be appropriate to crack a bottle of champagne across the start of the rostrum to do so. But have a great conference, everyone. Thank you very much.